Hey guys, my name is Corey with Alpine freeze dryers, and I wanted to go over today how to set up the freeze dryer and kind of what the unboxing process looks like. So to start with, it's going to show up very similar to this. It's going to be wrapped up and kind of taped. There's going to be a bunch of saran wrap around the top of it. But at the end of the day, you've got a pallet with a box with a bunch of boxes up on top. If you need to move it after it arrives to you, you can cut all these off, and then the bottom part actually becomes very light comparatively. But you can actually move this with a dolly if you need to bring it from the outside to the inside. You can just slip a hand dolly underneath of it. Also, two guys can just get underneath of it on the pallet and lift it off. But this pump does weigh about 30 pounds, so it's kind of nice to take off the pallet, or take the pump off the box and then move it after that. Some things that are included in this box are things like your power cord, your accessories. It's also going to have your Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers. There's going to be a tool for draining the pump. So all the accessories that you need to get going are in this box, as well as the pump is obviously in this box. So the oil for the pump is going to be in this box. But literally everything that you need to start freeze drying is contained within these boxes. When it comes to delivery of the pallet, the freight company will take it off the truck and put it on the ground for you and bring it as far as your driveway. They won't help you put it into your garage or put it into your house, unfortunately. That's just not something that freight companies do. Once you've gotten your package to your house, sometimes you'll see damage on the corners or like scuffs on the corners and things like that, just on the box. Oftentimes it's not the actual machine that's damaged, it's just the packaging that got damaged, which is kind of expected in shipping. The only time that we see real damage to machines in shipping is when there's some kind of a fork strike. Sometimes he can hit one of these panels with the forklift itself. That being said, if that happens, still receive the package. We insure all of our machines. Oftentimes though, it's just cosmetic scuffs. And if there is some kind of fork strike, it's just the panel that needs replaced. If a panel does need replaced, it's super easy to replace it. And all it is just us shipping it out to you and 6 bolts to take it off. The main thing though is that no matter what the damage, just go ahead and receive it, unbox it, and we'll assess the damage. And then from there, we can make a decision if the machine needs to be returned to us or it's something simple like a panel that can just get replaced. Now that you've got your machine inside and ready to set up, I want to go over how to cut open the box. There is some nuance to this. What you don't want to do is you don't want to take the machine out of the box by lifting the machine. It's really heavy, you'll throw your back out and you might drop the machine. What we want to do is we want to cut the front open or any of the sides open and take the panel down and then take the machine out so that way we can get under it and lift it. In order to do that, you're going to take either a utility knife or some kind of pocket knife, and you want to cut in straight on the edge right here. You don't want to cut here on the face because you can scratch the machine, or you can cut a vacuum hose. You want to cut right here at the edge, and you want to cut all the way down. You also want your blade facing right in here, not at an angle. Once you have the side of the box removed, you can slide the machine out and then lift it up. One thing to also note is that this box is screwed down to the pallet from the inside. So although it may look like there's no strapping on it, you're not going to be able to just take the box off the pallet. The box and the pallet are one piece. Now that we've got the machine out of the box, we want to pick where we're going to put it. Often this is done beforehand. People buy carts and things while the machine is in transit, just make sure that they got everything set up. But if you're looking for where to put it, what you want is something that's sturdy and level. Even this lifetime table is a little too weak for this machine. You can see this lifetime table is kind of bowing a little bit. It's just a plastic table. Often you want something that's just a little bit more sturdy. What I try to look for in a cart is if it's sturdy enough for me to sit on it, then it's probably strong enough for the machine. The machine and the pump, they weigh about 150 pounds, give or take. So you want to make sure that it's going to be able to be there for a long time and not sag. The freeze dryer does make some noise. It's not super loud. It's kind of like a dryer or a loud refrigerator running all the time. So you want to consider where you're going to put it. Often I tell people you want it in a garage or somewhere where you can put a closed door between you and it. It's not terribly loud noise, but it is constant noise. So you definitely want some kind of barrier between you and it, just that way you don't have to listen to it forever. When it comes to the height of the cart, you want it at least a few inches off the ground. You really need it to be at least 6 inches off the ground in order to get proper drainage on the machine. You want to think about the size of room that you're going to have this machine in. You don't want this machine inside of a closet or inside of a small space because it will generate some heat. You want a space that's got better ventilation. You also want to make sure that you've got good ventilation on the sides. We'd say at least 3 inches on each side and at least 2 inches on the back, just for ventilation of the cabinet itself. That's going to help move air through the cabinet and keep good refrigeration temperatures. If you're keeping this machine in your garage, you do want to factor in your local temperatures. We recommend to run it anywhere from 32 degrees to 90 degrees. If you get outside those ranges, it can void the warranty and there becomes real issues when it comes to performance on the machine. That being said, I do keep mine in my garage. We live here in Idaho and it gets kind of cold in the winter, so I end up running my machine a lot throughout the winter because it does generate some heat. So I like going into a warm garage in the winter, and the machine will warm up the garage and I get to be able to freeze dry at the same time. Now that we've got some of those housekeeping topics out of the way, we can go ahead and open up the machine. This is going to be your quality control checklist. So we include with all of our machines our quality control checklist and kind of what we did, the values that we saw here in the factory. The setup manual is going to be with the trays and mats. If for some reason you lose the setup manual or you can't find it, it is available on our website under the downloads page as well. On that subject, if there's anything missing from your order, just reach out to us. We can go ahead and ship it and get it to you as quickly as possible. When you're cutting into the saran wrap right here, you don't want to cut the cover that's underneath of it. So what you want to do is take a knife and then peel it back and then slowly cut along where you're holding. So kind of pull it off a little bit and go ahead and cut. Once you get that done, you can unwrap it. Now that we've got that off, we can go ahead and remove this cover. And one thing that I want to go ahead and talk about is that this cover was originally designed as packaging material. We had some other packaging material earlier, but we decided to switch to this cover because we thought it looked nicer. That being said, it still has to function as packaging material. So we have these slits in each one of the corners of the cover in order to allow for lifting with our crane here in the shop. So there's these eye bolts that we can screw into the machine. We can lift them in and out of boxes. So every single one of our machines goes out with these slits in each corner. We get a lot of calls about it, but they are intentional and every one of our machines has it. Now that we have the cover off, we can go ahead and do another layer of saran wrap. Kind of similar as before. You want to peel it off and then you don't want to scratch the machine. So you just kind of cut slowly. You definitely want to stay away from the drain hoses and the vacuum hoses. Don't cut anywhere near those because if they even get a little nick, then it won't be able to get down to vacuum. Everything should be labeled as far as drain hose and vacuum hose. Right here is your drain valve as well, so it'll be taped up in here on top. We've got a reminder here to remove these orange zip ties. These orange zip ties can kind of be a big deal sometimes. We've had a few customers where they will say that they removed them, but they'll actually just go through and cut them off. And the problem with that is that if this vacuum seal right here has even a hole the size of human hair, you won't be able to get down to vacuum. So do not just cut these, you'll get a huge vacuum leak. What you have to do is you have to remove this completely and then cut these off and remove it completely from underneath the gasket. If there's ever anything under the gasket, anything at all, it can't, like a piece of dust or a piece of paper, or something like a piece of paper towel or something that gets shoved in there. When you're cleaning it, it won't be able to get down to vacuum and it'll continually throw vacuum leaks. In order to cut these off, we're gonna set this up on top. We'll take our knife and you just take and just break it, pull it out. Take this one, break it, pull it out. And then reinstall the gasket. Okay. At that point, you can go ahead and remove this plastic cover. We're going to keep this one on because we're going to sell this machine, as well as the cover on the screen can be removed. This can go ahead and get removed as well. You'll want to either use the tab that we left you for the tape or just be very delicate as you're cutting into it. Just make sure that you do not cut this vacuum hose. It will never get down to vacuum if there's even the smallest nick. If there is a hole in one of these vacuum hoses, it's just really hard to diagnose because it's not a very common leak area. We really don't get very many leaks at all, but we have seen here in the shop where if these get nicked, they just are really hard to diagnose. So when you are cutting into this, you want to just cut, there's just a layer of tape right here that needs cut, and then the whole thing will come apart. So you just take your knife, just kind of score it, and then the whole thing will come apart. You don't really want to cut into the plastic at all. On a medium machine, we've got this style of cord. So this is just a regular 110 outlet, should fit pretty much any outlet in most homes. On the large machine, we have a different style cord. This is called a NEMA 20 amp receptacle or NEMA 20 amp cord. So you'll notice that there's a little dog leg right here that's a little different than most cords. That being said, you can find the receptacle for this at Ace Hardware. It's about $5 for this receptacle. It's still a 110 outlet, but it's just a higher amperage outlet. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure that you have a commercial electrician install your power and make sure that your power is up to code. But most homes have outlets like this. So this is what a large outlet will look like. And obviously this is what a normal medium outlet will look like. Every home is going to have one of these. Most homes have some version of this somewhere in the house. Some other things to consider with power requirements is that if you accidentally plug your machine into 220 volt, it will void the warranty, and there's not a lot that we can do to help because it will fry the machine. So don't plug it into 220. That is really, really bad. There's a few other things to consider with power requirements. So how far the machine is from the panel or like from the breaker box can also affect the performance on the refrigeration system. So we've actually had customers that had something like a 200 to 300 foot run from their power box. And what that does is it causes a voltage drop, and the voltage drop prevents the refrigeration from kicking on. So also make sure that your receptacle that you're putting it in is close enough to the breaker panel to not cause some kind of voltage drop. Generally that starts to happen after maybe 100, 200 feet of run. You could start to see issues. Some other things that we've seen when it comes to electrical issues is that a GFCI it has what's called nuisance tripping. So GFCIs in general don't really like to have things that are inductive motors on them. So there's two inductive motors on this freeze dryer. There's both the vacuum pump and the compressor. Both of those are inductive motors, and those and GFCIs just don't get along. So if you're running it on a GFCI and you continue to trip your GFCI, chances are the machine is functioning just normally and the GFCI is functioning just normally. There's a lot of nuisance tripping when it comes to GFCIs. Just kind of factor that in. If you've got problems on setup with your GFCI, it could be that it's just too sensitive for the application. Going back to voltage drops and how far your machine is from an outlet, you definitely don't want to plug it into an extension cord. Plugging it into an extension cord can void the warranty, especially if it is a 100-foot extension cord that's a 14 gauge. Something like that is going to really harm the electronics and the refrigeration system. So make sure that it's not plugged into any kind of an extension cord. So just make sure to plug the machine directly into the wall and make sure that that outlet is close to the breaker panel. Now that we've got the machine turned around, we can go ahead and plug it in and turn it on. One big thing with this plug-in is make sure that it is all the way in. If it's even out just a little bit, it probably won't turn on. So make sure that it's plugged in all the way, give it a good push, and then we can go ahead and plug this in and then turn that on. Now that we've got the machine plugged in, we are ready to plug in the pump. So we'll find the vacuum hose, it's labeled vacuum hose, and we want to go ahead and just push this onto the barb. That's all it takes. We, here at the shop, we never even use clamps, but if you want to use a clamp, you're welcome to, but it will get down to vacuum just fine just by pushing it onto the barb. The vacuum pump is set to the on position all the time. There's no switch on the vacuum pump to turn it on and off. It literally is just on all the time if it's got power. So what you'll want to do is take this zip tie off, and then you'll want to plug this into the machine. If this gets plugged into the wall, then the vacuum pump will be running all the time. So anyways, it plugs directly into the machine, and then the machine will tell the vacuum pump to turn on and off. Now that we got the vacuum pump plugged in, we are ready to fill it up with oil. This does come with break-in oil. You'll use almost this entire bottle, pretty much the entire bottle, just a little shy. So don't fill it all the way up like right off the bat, but fill it most of the way up, and then leave a little bit in the bottle until you can kind of see the gauge on the sight glass. This is, again, just break-in oil. We do recommend Dairyland vacuum pump oil. So Dairyland vacuum pump oil has a lot of really good properties that are good for freeze dryers. In order to fill the oil up, we're going to take the oil mist filter off of the machine, unscrew it, and then we can go ahead and pour this into this hole. Again, you want to leave just a little bit in the bottle and then kind of see where the level is on the sight glass. The level that we're looking for is somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 the way up the sight glass. If we get it too full, let's say we get it all the way above the sight glass, there is a chance that oil can leak past the reed valves in here, and you can get oil going back to the vacuum chamber. So you don't want to, the only time that we've ever seen oil go back to the vacuum chamber is when that happens, is when the vacuum pump gets overfilled. Now that we've got the vacuum pump filled up, we can reinstall this oil mist filter. This is our standard oil mist filter, and it does let a little bit of oil mist out of it, especially when the machine is pumping from atmosphere down to vacuum. We have our 3-stage oil mist filter to try and help prevent that, but there's kind of 2 options when it comes to dealing with the oil mist. So for me, the oil mist doesn't really make much of a difference. My machine runs in my garage and I don't have a great sense of smell, so I don't really worry about it. Some people say that it worries them because it looks like smoke. It's not smoke coming out of the machine, it's literally just oil mist coming out of the machine. There is a cheap but effective solution for the oil mist. You can take just a rag or a microfiber towel, and you can wrap it around here at the base and then just put a few rubber bands over top of that. That will prevent 99% of the oil mist from coming out. If you don't like that option, you can get the engineered solution. The engineered solution is obviously a little bit more expensive, but both are effective in preventing the oil mist. Let's go over the setup for a commercial vacuum pump. If you ordered a commercial vacuum pump, it's going to generally look something like this. If it doesn't look exactly like this, it could look like something like this or like this, but in general, the setup is usually the same. Most of these commercial vacuum pumps, they kind of all take from the same design. So regardless of the exact one that you get, it's going to look very similar to this. So when you get it, it's going to need a barb, and each fitting has a gasket that goes with it. And then each of those fittings has a clamp that goes with that. So this is our inlet valve. So the inlet valve is going to be for the vacuum line, or this is the vacuum in portion. So we'll go ahead and put this down. You get a gasket and then the barb and the clamp over all of that. You take this, go ahead and lock it in. And just make sure that it's good and tight. If this doesn't get tight enough, you could get a vacuum leak in that gasket. We'll go ahead and make sure that our gas ballast valve is on. With the commercial vacuum pumps, you always want to run them with the gas ballast valve in the on position. Some of them say on, some of them just have an O and a C, but you want to make sure that it's to the on position. With the commercial vacuum pumps, you want to run it on all the time. You never want to close it. The standard vacuum pumps, it can spit a little bit of oil. These commercial vacuum pumps, they don't spit any oil, so just run it all the time. This is our 3-stage oil mist filter. This should come standard with all of our commercial vacuum pumps. If for some reason there is a rubber gasket plugging this hole, you need to remove that rubber gasket. If that rubber gasket is not removed, then it can pressurize this chamber, and this can have oil come out of it because it's now a pressurized chamber. Anyways, you don't want oil coming out of your vacuum pump, so make sure that that is removed. And then when we go ahead and install this, we're gonna make sure that we've got a gasket between it. We're gonna put that on. And then we're going to put the clamp on and tighten it down. Sometimes there's a different size of fittings. So these are KF16 fittings. Sometimes there's a KF25 fitting somewhere that we've got to adapt over to. If that's the case, all we do is we send you this adapter, and instead of one clamp, you've got 2 clamps now. So to use the adapter, you literally just put the gasket in between there, put one clamp on, and then just put it on like you normally would. Once you have this set up, you do want to make sure to fill it up with oil. There is a oil reservoir here that you can unscrew and then fill it up with oil. Same thing as the other pumps. You want to be about 1/3 of the way up the sight glass, up to about 1/2 the way up the sight glass. So make sure that's full of oil before it turns on. Now we are ready to plug in the electronics, but before we do that, we want to make sure that this is set to 115 volts. So you'll see now that it's 130, and we can just go ahead and select that down. We will do this in the factory, but in case we missed it, or in case it gets set in the field somehow, make sure that that's set to 115 volts. And then we can go ahead and plug it in. Not every commercial vacuum pump is going to have that selector switch, but if it does, you want to make sure that it's at 115. And then just like our standard vacuum pump, this will plug into the freeze dryer right here. And we can take our vacuum hose and plug it right in there. Another thing with power requirements, so although our standard vacuum pumps do not have an on-off switch, our commercial vacuum pumps do have an on-off switch. This is the on position. You're going to want to leave it in this position all the time. The machine will tell the vacuum pump to turn it on and off. If you leave it off for some reason, or if you plug this into the wall, it just won't work. This needs to be on and plugged into the machine, not the wall. The first thing you want to do when you get your machine is to run a blank load in the machine. The reason for that is sometimes the silicone can have a weird smell to it, and although we've had our silicone third-party tested, it doesn't prevent it from having a smell to it. So to get rid of that, all you have to do is run a blank load in the machine with all your trays and mats. What I would do is take all my trays and mats out of the packaging, throw them into the machine, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the machine on quick start, and then hit start. It's going to tell me to close the door, close the chamber. I want to make sure that my drain valve is closed. And if I have a fresh air valve on this side, I want to make sure that is closed as well. From there, I can go ahead and skip the freeze cycle. And I also want to make this as hot of a load as possible. So with vacuum degassing, you want good vacuum, you want really deep vacuum, but you also want really high temperatures. So all I'm going to do is go here to max shelf temp, and I'm going to run that as high as it's going to go. There we go. So once that's as high as it can go, the longer the better on this as well. So 24 hours is good. You can run it longer if you want, but 24 hours would be great. We vacuum degas these machines before we send them out, but the silicone mats do not get vacuum degassed. And about 1 in 10 people is what's considered by science a hyper taster. So about 1 in 10 people can still taste that silicone smell, or that silicone taste that comes off the silicone. I personally can't taste that, but if you have that problem, feel free to do this load, and it's going to help vacuum degas all that smell out of the silicone. Once you've done your blank load, you're ready to start freeze drying. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks for watching.